Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today on our session concerning the opportunities in UK real estate, hosted by Carrick Wealth Nigeria and our partners API Global. In true Nigerian fashion, I'm sure there'll be some people joining after the start time, but no challenge. We'll make sure we record this and get this across to anybody who's interested in hearing more. So with that in mind, I'd like to introduce the people on the call today. My partners at API, led by the Regional Director for API across Africa, which is Mr. Tony Jordan, Paul Ajibite, who is the Managing Partner for VMS Global, who we work with very closely, and myself, Dele Adeshina, Managing Partner for Carrick Wealth here in Nigeria. So today we intend to just share some highlights and some snippets concerning UK property market, things that you ought to have some more information concerning, the things I'm sure you'll find interesting, and some specific actionable opportunities. So just by way of very brief background before I hand over to my partners and we get into some more detail, let me just touch on an introduction for myself, Carrick Wealth. So Carrick is an independent financial advice company. It has offices all over Southern Africa and East Africa. We have offices in Mauritius, and we've now
We've lost you, Delhi. Seems like we're having technical difficulties in Lagos.
okay, I'm not sure what's
Hopefully it'll
happened there.
come. Are you back, Delhi?
I'm back here. I'm not sure what's happened, but yeah, we're used to
There we
those
go.
things in.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Absolutely.
no challenge. So just very simply, just my introduction. So yeah, we're here in Nigeria. That proves it. You can tell when you lose power. So long story short, what Carrick do? We are concerned with helping Nigerian clients to be global citizens. That means having the opportunity, the freedom, the financial privilege to be able to send children abroad for school if you so choose, to be a global citizen when you're in your retirement and even during your working life, to be able to move freely around the globe, to eat a croissant in Paris on the Champs-Élysées or to do your shopping in London or New York. The reality is, with the decline of Naira, which we're all very aware of, which has been enormously steep, we believe with huge conviction, and I believe very passionately, that we also need to have some hard currency assets and some hard currency passive income. The challenge is, I think that's common sense for many of us. I think the challenge becomes, where do I start? How do I take action? Who do I trust? Who do I partner with? So it's in that regard that we're very privileged to be sitting here in Lagos, being able to bring your international opportunities right to your doorstep. So providing information and guidance to allow you to make decisions and to take action. Now, from my perspective, one of my favorite tools for ensuring you're a global citizen and participating on a global scale is to become a landlord, to own property in the UK, receive passive income in sterling. The UK, as Tony will touch on in more detail, has been a staple investment for many, many, many decades, is proving itself in many, many regards. So with that in mind, we want to tell you some more information. But one of the challenges I find speaking to Nigerians often is simply, oh, they didn't know, for example, that they could borrow, they could get a mortgage and be able to, participate in buying UK property. So one of the reasons I absolutely love property is if you bring your portion, the bank will bring theirs. So you take your $1 and you're turning it into two. So I think that's one of the most wonderful opportunities that we have to take part in. And with that, without further ado, I'd like to hand the floor to Tony and to Paul to take you through this in more details. Thank you, gents. And
Thank you, Delhi. And for everybody who's on the call, we're having technical difficulties in Lagos. I'm actually sat in Harare, so there's more chance of that happening again. But just a quick thank you for everybody for joining today's webinar. As Delhi touched on, this is a sort of more of an educational webinar to talk through who we are as a business, our partnership with Carrick and Delhi and his team up in Lagos. So what I would like to do before I get to bring Paul into the conversation, who's going to touch more on African mortgages and specifically for Nigerians, is to actually talk about who we are. We're a UK-based company, API Global. As Delhi said, I look after Africa for the business. I spent 20 years living and working out of Dubai in the Middle East, where Paul sits, and made the move earlier this year in March, Q1, to sort of come and base myself out of Zimbabwe. So head office is in London. We have a Manchester office as well. The operations team, the product team who work with the developers on the ground work out of the UK. We have offices in South America. As I say, I look after Africa. Saudi and Dubai to look after the Middle East. And then we go across into Asia with Singapore, Shanghai, Bangkok, and then right down to the west coast of Australia. So we do have boots on the ground. We're business to business. As I said, we partnership with Carrick, who are the largest wealth management business in Africa. We look after all the offices across my team. I'm based in Harare, so I look after Zambia, Mauritius, and then up through that corridor to look up to Delhi and his team up in Lagos. Now, we are a product company and we are a sales company, but first and foremost, API Global is a research-led business. We're in an investment property business, so all our properties that we offer clients globally have to have the proper due diligence done and research done. Why Manchester? Why Birmingham? Why London? And whereabouts in these cities are we going to find the pockets of value where clients can invest into and make money? As Delhi touched on when he did his introduction, this is a tangible asset based in the UK. You're buying hard currency in pounds, you're having money offshore. But ultimately, all those things that go into your investment portfolio and you're thinking around it, it's purely a vehicle to make money. And we try and make that process as easy as possible. So the sourcing team, as I say, sit in the UK, in London and Manchester. They work on a daily basis with our developers. And we're very proud to have got to the point within the business. API Global's been going for 10 years, where we work with what we know are the best developers in the UK. So Savoy and Foreshore Group in Manchester, Elevate Property Group in the Midlands, Derby, Nottingham, Birmingham. We have a long track record with these developers. We're in double digits with all three of those developers. And what does that mean to you as a client? What that actually means to you is that these developers have sold off, we've sold off plan, they've built it, we put tenants in, and clients have made money. So when we've done 10 and 11 projects with these guys, we know they can deliver on time, they deliver in the right locations to a fantastic specification, giving you every chance to make the most out of your investment into UK property. The investment advice comes from somebody like myself. I'm from the UK originally, even though I've lived in the Middle East for 20 years, now based in Africa. But I understand the UK property market. As I say, I'm from there. I know all the regions and been doing this for 20 years. So I'd like to think that the advice I give to every client who is individual and different, whether that be why they're thinking of doing it, what budget they have, we work through that process and from the initial conversations that we have. One of the biggest strings to the bow on the end-to-end service is our sales progression team. And again, it may be the first time that you're thinking about investing into the UK through API and Carrick. So we try and make the process as easy as possible. Now we have a team in London, Manchester, Africa, the Middle East and Asia who work on the sales progression team. Once we've identified a particular project and we've selected a unit, whether a one or a two bedroom apartment, depending on budget normally, the sales progression team will work with myself, with Delhi and with Paul and his team and the lettings and management team to get the client from a reservation to exchange of contracts and ultimately through to completion. We have 6 or 7 different conveyancing solicitors in the UK who will represent you in the legal process with the developer's solicitor. We've used these over many, many years, and they are very, very good conveyancing solicitors who understand the different markets that API Global work in, and especially the African market, which can be very different from different regions across the globe. We provide quarterly construction updates for clients who've invested into the UK. When I say quarterly, it's more like weekly and monthly because the majority of our product team are always on site with the developers, taking videos of the show flats and construction progression. So we send these out very regularly. And at this stage, if he's not disappeared, I'm going to bring in Paul from the mortgage side of the business, who's going to talk to you a little bit about African mortgages and more specifically Nigerians investing into the UK. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you very much, Tony. Thanks for the kind introduction, as well as Dele. Much appreciated. Thanks for inviting me on. So I'm the managing partner of VMS Global. But I think I'll give you a quick intro about myself and our services and how we can be of assistance, and just a bit of background on me. I'm actually Nigerian, but born in the UK, studied in the UK, hence the strong English accent. However, a majority of my family are sort of in between Nigeria and the UK, and property investment has just been a vehicle for my family for as long as I can remember. And leverage has been a big part of the portfolio as well. So I just want to kind of use that as an example because I think Dele mentioned quite correctly, a lot of people don't understand that they are actually able to get leverage. And I always tell people we can get anybody a mortgage as long as you are not sanctioned. So we have various different lending lenders that we work with internationally, from the African banks to the more European banks that are happy to lend to Nigerian residents. And the main difference between buying a investment property and a home that you're going to live in is an investment property is considered as unregulated. Okay, so the process is a lot more straightforward. The main points are that you'll be looking at around 65% loan to value. So it will mean you'll need around 35% deposit. However, if you have a slightly higher deposit, the rates can be somewhat better, but we're working around 65% loan to value. And then, the main things we need to show is where our funds have come from, the source of the deposit, and proof of income, etc., etc. However, even if you have no income, we still also have lending options for clients that do not have a straightforward or a monthly income in place, because these are buy-to-let investments. They stack up on their own. The lenders are really concerned about, will the rental income pay the bank's interest? And obviously all of the investments that API and Dele and the team at Carrick will be showing will be stacking up from an investment perspective. So I would say around, maybe this year we'll do around 100 mortgages for Nigerian clients. And there's plenty of options and plenty of appetite, and more lenders are, sort of approaching the Nigerian market because it is a big market. However, it is high risk. So there is more due diligence that is, required. So the process, I'd say, takes around 3 to 4 months from start to finish. So the key is just speaking to me early, so we can arrange all of your documentation, submit the applications, and just make sure that it's a smooth and seamless process. The benefit as well is we work very closely with the sales progression team at API Global. So it just means that there's more of a seamless approach. We can, essentially we know which lenders to approach, which lenders to avoid, and it just means it's a smoother process for the clients all in all. So I think my details will be shared after. So if anybody wants a free consultation, I'm happy to sort of have those conversations. Even if you're looking to buy in the next 1-2 years, still happy to sort of have those conversations. And once we've had that conversation, we can then discuss in greater detail the sort of next steps that will be required. The main thing the main part of the process will be completing a fact find, where we go into detail about your income, your expenditure, your assets, your liabilities, and then that will determine the kind of rates and illustrations which I can provide to you before progressing. So I think I'll wrap up for now, and feel free to reach out to me after this webinar, and yeah, happy to answer your questions in more detail.
Thank you, Paul.
Perhaps.
That was very comprehensive. Sorry, Delhi.
No, I was just not to say, Paul, perhaps if you don't mind, you could just give a kind of indication of the type of mortgage interest rate we're seeing for Nigerian clients, and also the direction of mortgage interest rates, given the Bank of England's recent cuts and the trajectory that's expected. So if you wouldn't mind just touching on that, I think that's helpful as well.
Yeah, so with rates, I'm always careful with rates, but because Dele's asked, and the reason for that is it's a client by client basis. So the process would complete a fact find, and then based on those answers, we know which lenders we can approach. But rates wise, we're looking around 6.5% up to around 8.5% on average for Nigerian residents. But again, it depends on various different factors, in terms of determining where what kind of rate you'll be able to achieve now. Now, over the last 12 months, the market's been a lot more positive than 2023. So it's been a breath of fresh air for us in the market. Rates have been steadily decreasing, and there is a lot of optimism. A lot of lenders I'm speaking to on a regular basis are confident that rates will continue to drop next year. So the sentiment is easing. So my thought process is, when we're investing in real estate, the interest rate isn't the be all and end all, because you're investing in assets that are appreciating in value. But essentially, I'm here to guide you through the process, because typically when we apply for a mortgage, we'll typically fix our product for 2 years or 5 years, and we'll continuously be reviewing the rates available to you, so that we could always try and save you money in the short term as well as in the long term.
Thank you, Paul.
Okay, we'll continue. Thank you very much, Paul, for the overview. As I say, I'm sure there's quite a few people on the call that have learned something from that. And just as Delhi said earlier on, the fact that we have access through Paul and his team to leverage in the UK alongside to obviously increase your overall return on investment with your property transaction. So again, going back to the sales progression team, they work on the completion phase as well as getting clients exchanged. With Redstone, our property management business, we've just got, I think it's just shy of 1,000 properties in the UK that we'll look after for our clients. They do everything from finding the tenant, doing the snagging with the developer, collecting the keys, furnishing the apartment, and then on a monthly basis, managing that asset for the client. So it's a full, as you can see from the 10-stage step, everything from the research before we even launch a project, right through to the last one, which is portfolio optimization. This is a new AI initiative that we started recently. We have a lot of clients, once they buy one property through API and Carrick, they buy a second or a third and look to build a small portfolio of properties. And what this optimization does is we'll look at your properties, the rental income, the capital agreement, and advise whether it's to hold or maybe release some equity. So the question again, there's a few basic questions, like we get as a team, as Delhi touched on, didn't know I could get finance. I didn't know I could invest in the UK. Who's going to look after me? So we've touched on those, but I just want to give you some headline sort of notes to take away. Well, why invest in the UK? We've touched on the currency play. We've touched on that word diversification. Where I sit in Harare, a lot of people are very heavily invested in Zimbabwe. So majority of my clients come to us through Carrick. So I work out of the Carrick office in Harare, and tell me that they want to diversify their portfolio and get some money offshore. So the API support, which we've just touched on all the way through the 10-stage step, and market knowledge is key. Client protection. We try and mitigate as much risk as possible for the client. As I say, the majority of clients, as much as there are clients building portfolios, there's a big percentage of first-time buyers into the UK. So mitigating risk through sending money offshore into escrow accounts with UK solicitors, assignability on the contracts, meaning if your circumstances change, i.e., if you're buying off plan and it's a year, 2 years off plan, people's circumstances do change. So we need that assignability in certain contracts, that if you sort of ill health, lose your job, death in the family, is a good enough reason we can assign your contract to another buyer. It's established legislation. It's very rare that the property sort of market and rules and regulations in the UK change. It's very settled, it's very established, and it's one of the strongest property laws anywhere in the world, protecting investors and landlords. We've got 30 years data, and with the housing deficit at the moment in the UK, we need 300,000 new properties each year. We've got to the stage where this generation of renters, the sort of first time buyer age in the UK is 38. So you can imagine a graduate coming out of university in their early 20s, they're going through a cycle now of having to rent, which is fueling the rental market in the cities that we've identified for growth in capital appreciation and rental income. And a lot of the projects we do, and especially very popular with African investors, is the off-plan properties. You get in your deposit protection, you're buying really to discount, let's say it's a year or 2 years off plan, 5% growth per year, which is pretty conservative on a £200,000 property. It's worth 220 on completion in 2 years' time, but you've only put £40,000 in, which is 20%. So you've had a 50% return on your deposit over the build time. So there's a lot of benefits from investing into off-plan property. A lot of people come to me and to Paul and say, I'm looking for a ready property. Well, why? Well, I want the income. It's, well, if you're taking a mortgage, your rental income is going to pay your mortgage, your service charge, and your management fee. And when clients understand that, unless you're a cash buyer, they see the benefits of buying off plan. And then again, we always look at in each individual, whether it's from a wealth perspective that Delhi looks at the overall picture of the client, and brings us in from a property perspective and a mortgage perspective with Paul's team. We look at every single client as different, and we look at how efficient we can set that transaction up for the client. And just a bit of a sort of, I was chatting there about the generation of renters. This is the last year's figures for capital appreciation on the left and rental increase on the right. And this is just in the Manchester market. Manchester probably is, this year's been the number one hotspot in the UK for us. We're probably going to do in the region of between 720 and 750 units this year in the UK, which is best part of a $250 million worth of real estate we've sold globally. But the sort of where it's average and prime is, that's the prime developers that will work with the prime locations. And you can see the two-bed capital appreciation last year was just under 10%, and the two-bed rental growth last year was incredible at just under 23%. Now, I can't promise that this year, but we're already looking at the new data coming out from the big consultancy firms like Savills, JLL, people that we look at their predictions for the next year and 5 years. And they've actually just upgraded all the forecasts for the next 5 years to about 24 to 25%, which again figures around that sort of figure that we put out to clients and we use for cash flows, 5% increase in the rental market and your capital appreciation with thereabouts. Now on to, I'm just going to finish off now. We've just run through a bit of product. I'm not going to go through everything, but it's important to understand with the research and the due diligence that we do is core markets. And when I say why are they core markets, it's because we've got a good track record with delivering product to clients globally who've made money over the last 5 to 10 years we've been in business. We've built the relationship with the major developers in the UK who operate in the core markets within the UK for buy-to-let property. So Birmingham, Manchester and London, they're our core markets. And then the secondary locations like Nottingham, Derby, Cambridge, Kent, they're not secondary in investment. It's just a different offering for a client. And that generally comes down to budget. Not everybody can afford between £300,000 and £400,000 for a lovely apartment in Manchester. So we have secondary locations that people can come in and actually enter the UK market without, who have got a limited budget compared to actually our core markets that's sort of our bread and butter. Just going to go through a few projects now so you can see the type of projects that we do. This is the Waterhouse Gardens in Noma, which is north of Manchester, just outside the Ring Road. The developer is Stalboy. In my opinion, one of the best developers in the UK, not just in the northwest of the UK. They offer 100% deposit protection. I've sold more Stalboy stock this year than I ever done because of the locations of this project. You can see the sawtooth roof. That's going to be bars and restaurants. There are 5 blocks in this development in a regeneration area. It's up and coming. This is only going to add to the area and with the regeneration that the government are doing. It's got all the 5-star facilities like spas, swimming pools, cinema room, co-working space, which is very important now after COVID. And as I say, you get access to a rooftop garden on top of the bars and restaurants. So it's what I call a destination project, that people are going to want to live there and with a 5-10 minute walk into the city centre. And the second project is probably one of my favourites. We've only just launched Vivere. It's a branded residence, which means the first 4 stories on the building are a hotel. So you get all the facilities that you're going to get in a hotel, as I've just said, with the Waterhouse Gardens, cinema rooms, bars, restaurants, co-working space, private dining areas, gymnasiums. But the biggest seller for me here is really location. You can see top right, you've got the towers of Deansgate Square. It's literally less than a quarter of a mile away. But in the background, you can see on the left of the screen, there's the Metro link. Now, Manchester's got a fantastic public transport infrastructure. So at the back of Vivere, you have the Cornbrook station, and 3 minutes you're into Deansgate station. So you're just outside the city centre, which means that we've found a pocket of value. You're not banging the city centre and paying £200 per square foot more that you would do in Deansgate Square, but you're 3 minutes on a metro into Manchester city centre, which I think is the real key to this particular development. Moving down the country into Birmingham, we have a flagship project called The Addition, and the tall tower there, which is Centenary Tower. We have got access to the 36th floor for our investors globally. This Centenary Tower will not be launched by the developer until the end of Q1 2025, so we have early access. And then you've got Park Residence, the smaller building, which, sorry, you can't see, but that faces onto a park. But you can see from the buildings, this is a B1 postcode, so it's prime central Birmingham. And this proved very popular, and we've only just launched this possibly 2 weeks ago. And then on to Chapman's Yard. Again, I mentioned earlier on Elevate Property Group, one of our preferred developers that we work with. We have a fantastic relationship with these guys. This again is a B1 postcode, different pricing structure altogether than the Addition. I mean, you can invest into Chapman's Yard with a B1 postcode from about £240,000. Very well located, and as I say, we're doing 11 with Elevate. We know what they deliver, the specification, and the finish that they put on all their apartments. And a lot of my investors over the last 5 to 6 years who have invested through Elevate have made significant returns. And then last but not least, our new London project called the Becker. This is part of a big master plan. As you can see, the right-hand side, the first tower is phase 1 that we're selling. As I say, Birmingham, Manchester, and London are our core markets that we operate in. This is in an area where I know Delhi himself has got property on the Old Kent Road. It's very popular with Nigerian investors and families who live in that part of London. And again, you've got all the facilities you'd expect of a 5-star residence, and you're literally 5 to 10 minutes into central London. So that's all from me, from who we are and what we do as a business, and a bit of a snapshot of project. Again, I'd like to thank everybody for jumping on, and for Paul to join us from the mortgage side. And this presentation or any more in-depth information, Ellie will be able to send out. We are recording this, so anybody who wants the recording to listen to again or at home, And please reach out to Delhi and his team. Me and Paul are available for Zoom calls. We're just in the process, as Delhi knows, hopefully going to have somebody from an API perspective on the ground up in Lagos to support Delhi and his team. But in the meantime, any more in-depth information and one-to-one, please contact Delhi, and I'll be happy to jump on a call.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Paul. And
Thanks,
thank
Tony.
you.
Thanks, Delhi.
Thanks, everybody, for joining today. I think just to conclude, we wanted to try and keep this short and sweet. We can't cover everything in a session like this. So, as Tony has said, I'm right here in Lagos. So for anybody that's based in Nigeria, let's have a face-to-face meeting if possible. Or of course, we can have a Zoom or a phone call at your convenience as well. Again, just to reiterate, we're very passionate about Nigeria. Nigeria has wonderful opportunities for wealth creation. But unfortunately, it's proven to be perhaps a not very good place for wealth preservation, for preserving the true international purchasing power of your wealth. And therefore, as I said at the beginning, having some hard currency assets and incomes, real estate that's going to give you capital growth in sterling, rental income in sterling, I'd encourage everybody to do it. Anybody that's thinking about the future, thinking about passing financial privilege on to their children, if you were sitting in the UK or the US, whilst Tony mentioned Generation Rent, when young people in the UK end up buying their homes, they can often turn to their parents and get that financial support by way of a deposit or an investment. That's what I call financial privilege. I want us to have the same thing for our children and our children's children. And it starts by making a decision to start thinking about, how do I ensure I preserve the true value of my wealth? Nigeria just doesn't offer downside protection. We've got to go and do that for ourselves, guys. So with that, that's the call to action. Give us a call. Let's have a conversation. Let's look at what the options are. We've run through a few things today, but there's plenty of other things we can discuss. And yes, you can borrow. Yes, you're sitting in Nigeria. Yes, banks will lend to you, as Paul has touched on. So we'd be glad to speak to you about that in more detail, and happy to help as best we can. All right. So thanks, everybody. I think we should.
Thank you, Delhi. Thank you, everybody. Cheers, Paul.
Thank you all. Take care.
Thank you.